island that was completely built. But in 1771, the British decided, or Philadelphia was a very important city, so the British decided to build a fort here. They built the eastern and southern wall, are up as this granite, and the brick and dirt work were added in 1798 after the Revolution. The British built from 1771 to 1774 because that's when the Revolution began to really rise. They decided they didn't need this anymore, so they abandoned the fort. About 1775, the colonials came in and took over. They continued building here. We also built Fort Mercer, which is behind these trees on the New Jersey side. We also built Fort Williamsport, where these oil tanks now stand. George Washington had just been defeated at the Battle of Brandywine, and again at the Battle of Germantown, after which General Hale, Commander-in-Chief of the British Army, took his men into Philadelphia, took over the city. His plan was to defeat the Continental Army in the winter of 1777, but because he just had 2 battles, he needs to resupply before he can carry his plan out. Well, the supply lines are coming right up to Delaware, right past our 3 forts, so we're not going to allow that to happen. We hold 240 British naval ships right here on the river for 6 weeks, not allowing them to get into Philadelphia. During that 6 weeks, General Washington marches his way into Valley Forge, where they retrain the army. They eventually win the Revolutionary War, and that is why Fort Mifflin is known as the Fort of the Southern America. During that 6 weeks, the siege started in October of 1777. By November 10th, the British were tired of us getting in the way. They intensified their assault. We have 1,000 cannonballs every hour coming over these walls, destroying everything that's here. Today, if you go down along this wall right here, there are pockmarks that are 230 years old from British cannonballs that are still there. By November 14th, we're out of ammo. So the general here tells his men, for every soldier that catches a British cannonball, before it sinks into the mud, I'll give you a little bit more whiskey. Okay? That's what we did. We dumped the British cannonballs, put them in our cannons, fired them right back at the British. And it worked until we ran out of gunpowder on November 15th, 1777. Without any gunpowder, there's not much you can do. So the orders were to burn the rest of the buildings that once stood here. We left our flag flying high to symbolize we did not surrender. And we abandoned Fort and went over to Fort Mercer by way of Pennsylvania Navy ship. Now the flag that's hanging here today is the Continental Navy flag of the time. It's 13 stripes of red, white, and blue. The original flag was 3 or 4 times bigger than the one that's hanging here now. And the mast that it hangs on today was also 3 or 4 times bigger than this one because it came right off of a big tall ship. During the siege in 1777, this flag, now adopted and known as the Fort Mifflin flag, could be seen from the city of Philadelphia. And if you take a look north, you'll see we're not that far off. Any questions so far? Okay. We're going to go into the casements right below us. Before we do that, there are a couple warnings. The floors are uneven and a little slippery, so watch your step. The ceilings are a little low, so watch your head. And it is very dark back there. You have lights back there, but you have to allow your eyes to adjust to the light. That's it. Straight and right like turn. Right like here.
I'm right.
Yeah, use that.
Here, let me see. No, there might be some flavor. There might be.
You guys are going to see them on the beds if you like. sturdy. Did we lose? Oh, okay. I thought maybe we lost one. You have a seat. It's okay. You kept me comfortable. Are you feeling uncomfortable here?
Right, which one underneath, so I get both layers.
Are you feeling comfortable here? No. Okay. We've heard that before, so it's okay. Okay. Again, as I said on the outside, the brick and jet brick were added in 1798, just after the Revolution. Above you is 3 or 4 feet of dirt and 3 or 4 feet of concrete. And the reason they did that is because cannonballs did not explode back then. They were very brutal, on the other hand. If a cannonball hit the dirt that was above us, it would make a small hole in the dirt. They fill that up with more dirt and we continue fighting. So it was very, very secure. One misconception that we have here is that they use these very windows here to shoot out at the enemy. There are 2 reasons that is not possible. Number one, the soldiers at that time were about my size, with the exception of George Washington. He was about 6'3". He was very tall for the time. And I could barely look out of these windows, let alone get a musket in there to fire out and aim. The second reason you can't do that is because the windows actually narrow the further out they go. And the reason for that is because if enemies are firing at us, there's a very slim chance that their artillery is going to make it into the shed. Or, I'm sorry, into this room right here. So again, this is a very secure room. They only use these for light and ventilation. And believe me, they don't give off much light at all. You're sitting in casemate number 5. During the Civil War, these rooms were used as to hold prisoners, and each room held a different type of prisoner. When you walk down the hallway, the first door on the left, that's casement 1. They held 216 Confederate prisoners of war in that one room. Okay. Walking down the hallway a little bit more, you have casemates 2 through 4. They held on the average about 45 men, or between like 35, 45 men in each of those rooms. They were local outlaws and political prisoners. And in this room, we held about 50 to 75 Union soldiers accused of breaking the law. Now, let me tell you about their living conditions. When you were caught with whatever you had on your body at the time. No time to grab your coat or your shoes. Whatever you had on you at the time is what you came down here with. If you happen to be sitting in your underwear, that's what you came down here with. It's a little chilly in here today. It feels good to me because it's hot outside and I'm sweating in this outfit. But from November through February, it does get brutally cold in here. Definitely not a place I'd like to be in my underwear. In order to go to the bathroom, they had a series of buckets along this back wall right here. And everything you did in the bathroom this morning before you left the house is what they did in these buckets. The only difference is there's about 50 to 75 people doing it. When the buckets are full, they empty them into the moat. Well, the moat's connected to the Delaware River at the time. And we're a little bit under sea level. So if the tide was a little too high or if it rained a little too hard, that moat water actually floods back in here up to about 2 feet at the time. But guess what? There's more. These beds that you're sitting on, except for you, they are more modern cots because we have reenactors that come in from time to time and stay here depending on the event and where they're from. But the beds they used were a little wider than we're used to because they slept 2 to 3 people per bed, 4 to 6 people per bunk. They slept sitting up because if that water comes in here, they don't want that getting into their lungs. And they also felt that washing the natural oils off of your skin was very bad for you, so they would only voluntarily bathe maybe once a month. The most popular place in the room would be this working fireplace. We would give them things like rice and potatoes to cook here and kept them well nourished. Fort Delaware, which is just down the river a ways, they had about a 20% death rate, which means for every 100 men, about 20 of them died. Here we had about a 2% death rate. We estimate about 30 people died in these rooms during the Civil War. Any questions so far? Okay, we're going to head back out the hallway here. You'll be able to see a little bit better, but still watch your step, and we're going to be back out on the corridor. No, but you know what? Do you know who Captain Jack Sparrow is? Oh, okay. You guys know who Captain Jack Sparrow is, right?
Yeah.
And guess what? He's going to be here August 23rd for Pirate Day.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It'll be fun. This building right here was originally used as a jail and a guardhouse. That's why there are bars on the windows at the bottom. But its primary use was an arsenal. It's where we kept all of our small weapons like muskets, pistols, bayonets, swords, knives, things like that. This right here, this building right behind me, was known as the Citadel, which translates to fort within a fort. The Citadel was a big cross-shaped trench in the middle of the grounds that only went up to about where the fort starts. And it was believed that if the enemies penetrated our walls, we can hold them off here at the Citadel. When they did the reconstruction in about 1798, between 1798 and 1800, they used the Citadel as foundation to build the Commandant's house on top of. And the Commandant was lucky enough to have his family stay with him. So, the original building was 2 stories. On the top floor would have been 2 bedrooms, one for him and his wife, and one for his children. On the bottom floor would have been his living quarters, things like kitchen, office, living room, dining room, things like that. And it is accessible to the public. The door is opened. The only reason we close that door and we ask visitors to keep it closed is because the birds fly in there and poop all over the place. But if you feel you want to go in there, that's fine, go right ahead. You are more than welcome to go in there and take a look around inside. Is she able to come up here or no? Okay. Okay, well I'll talk loud enough where you can hear me. That's all. Welcome to the new main attraction here at Fort Mifflin. Main attraction used to be casements. Not anymore. This is casemate 11. This is the one that everybody is dying to get into. Well, starting July 5th, it will be open to the public. So we're very excited to let the people go in finally and see what it's like in there. Very interesting room, trust me. Been in there many times. It's very, very cool. What happened was, this here is the Torpedo Magazine next to it. And the Torpedo Magazine was built in the late 1900s after casemate 11 had been abandoned. And because casemate 11 was not being used, they covered up the original entranceway. So we couldn't get into it. The Torpedo Magazine, what they would do is you go in there, there's a big hole in the ground. And what they would do is they had mines set out in the water. And when the ships passed over the mines, they would set them off by ways of wires and things like that. And it's where they tested the very first torpedo. But what we found out about casemate 11, we knew something was always here because just on the other side of this slate is a chimney. And nobody puts a chimney in the middle of the wall just because it looks pretty. So we figured it was a hot shot furnace. And we later found out differently. It was part of the original construction in 1771. And was used as a powder magazine. There are 2 rooms in there with a ventilation shaft that runs the length of the 2 rooms and windows that are connected to the ventilation shaft. The first room is dug a foot or 2 deeper because, again, with it being a powder magazine, they needed the air to circulate underneath the gunpowder. And that's why there are windows from the rooms into the ventilation shaft as well. Now, wait for this plane. in 1864, they turned this into what was known as nuisance lab, or what we would call solitary confinement. One person in particular was kept in here. His name was William H. Hale. I thought someone was walking out. Anyway, it was William H. Hale. William Hale was a Union soldier who fought for the North during the Civil War, but for personal reasons, along with the fact that he wasn't being paid, he left the Army. So, we sent 2 officers up to retrieve him on charges of desertion. According to Hale, they arrive at his house about 10 o'clock at night. He thinks they're burglars, grabs a shotgun, fires 2 shots through the door, wounds 1 officer, and kills the other. He's now brought up on charges for murder and desertion. He's tried and he's found guilty, and his sentence is death by hanging. So they bring him down here to Fort Mifflin. They put him down here in casemate 11. For many, many years, we thought he was kept in casemate 5, where we were all just sitting. But in 2006, our groundskeeper happened to be mowing the lawn over here. His foot fell into a little small sinkhole, and when he opened that up to try and repair it, he found the original entranceway to casemate 11 right here. Nobody had been in these rooms for about 135 years, and when he went in, he found all kinds of nice goodies. He found bottles, tin cups, pocket knife in 3 pieces, a penny from like 1863, 1864, numerous things like that. He also found a chamber pot that was full. No, it wasn't full, I'm just kidding. He did find a chamber pot though. But the most important thing that he found while he was here was he found that William Hale was kept in this room. How he found it out was he literally read the writing on the wall. While William Hale was put in this room for about 6 months, he carved his name, his signature, into one of the archways. And again, you'll be able to see that July 5th when we open to the public. Very exciting. But there are windows in there with bars on it that led to the ventilation shaft. But William decides he's not going to stick around. He kicks the bars out of the window. He escapes down the ventilation shaft out onto the parade ground and leaves Fort Mifflin. He's quickly recaptured and brought to Eastern State Penitentiary, not far from here. And he's brought back here on August 26, 1864. He's put in a small shack located next to where our bathrooms are today. And he's pacing back and forth for about 7 hours while he watches as they make his gallows. At 7 minutes past noon, they bring him out, and in front of the entire garrison, he becomes the only person ever executed by hanging here at Fort Mifflin. Any questions?
Where they buried him? On the grounds?
No, they actually buried him in his hometown, somewhere in Pennsylvania. It begins with a P. I can't remember the name of it though. Any other questions? Okay, follow me.
Oh, it's pretty steep.
Faster you come down easier.
Yeah. You never wear flip-flops to Fort Mifflin. Oh no. Especially if it rained anytime in that week.
And did double that in flip-flops.
In flip-flops?
Yes.
Oh, you're insane.
Here we go.
Yeah, just have to close the
Here we
door.
go, man.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay, this doorway right down here where the brick is, that is known as our Western Sally Port. We also have one right between these 2 buildings over here called the Northern Sally Port. On either side of the Sally Port is a room where the guards would stay. They would wheel their cannons right up to the doors that are there, open the doors and fire at their enemies on the other side. However, keep in mind that where the airport is today was a big back channel. We had, during the siege in 1777, we had 2 major British ships right there. And this wall was not brick at the time, it was only timbers and earthwork. And this corner took most of the damage during the siege, and that's why we eventually had to give it up. But again, we do have 2 Sally Ports here. This building right behind me here, a lot of people think it's our stables and where we kept our horses. But according to Private J.P. Martin, who was here during the Revolution, the mud was so thick here on Fort Mifflin it literally sucked the shoes right off of you. Probably flip-flops too. But if we had horses, their feet would have sunk right into the mud, so they would have been useless. We never had horses here. This is our open-air artillery shed. It's open on 3 sides to keep the heavy guns like cannons and cannonballs from rusting and going bad. And is the only open-air artillery shed still standing in the entire country. Behind me here is the Blacksmith Shop. It is a real working blacksmith shop. At the time of the Civil War, while Jacob Sauber was stationed here, there were 2 forges in there. And a forge is a big fireplace. It's connected to a fan. You fan the fire to make sure it's hot enough to melt metal. On days like today especially, it would get extremely hot in there with 2 forges going. So, Jacob's apprentice had passed out. This prompts Jacob to write a letter to the commandant saying, please, can we keep our front and back door open to allow the air to circulate in there and we can work better? And the commandant said, yeah, that's fine, go right ahead. And that's how we know that Jacob was stationed here. Now, things they would have made here are doorknobs, door hinges, nails, tools. Some of the tools that are in there were used to help put on the original gate right here at Fort Mifflin. And we have a volunteer blacksmith who comes in from time to time who's nice enough to make me what we call a period tool called a sergeant's tool. And it's called a sergeant's tool because only sergeants could afford this particular tool. This was used to maintenance your musket, the bottom of the barrel of a musket. Very small hole called a touch hole. Fire must pass through that in order for the gun to go off. So if it's clogged with gunpowder, it's not going to work. So we're going to pick it out with this very sharp pick right here. Okay. Also on our guns, we have a very sharp stone known as a flint. And to make sure it's down there, it's nice and tight, it's not going to go anywhere, we screw it down with this flathead screwdriver right here. And if the flint is not sharp enough to make a spark, the gun's not going to go off. You're on the front line, you're going to be dead pretty quick. So we chip away the stone on this side here and make sure that it is sharp enough to make that spark. Again, if you're on the front line and your gun does not go off, chances are they're going to kill you, and then anything on you that's good, like if your shoes are nice, they're going to pick everything clean of you because they can use them and you're not going to use them anymore. Most of your off time is spent cleaning and maintenance in your gun, making sure it go off when the time is right to use it. Any questions so far?
Did the sergeant's tool, did he let other just regular people use it?
He may have let his soldiers use it if needed, but he would be the only one that had his own personal one. Okay, follow me. Watch your step on this ditch. Okay, this mound right here is known as the Powder Magazine. We stored about 1,000 barrels of gunpowder in there at one time. Again, it's under 3 or 4 feet of dirt and 3 or 4 feet of concrete to protect it from cannonballs. After you go in there, you'll notice that the hallway actually zigzags in order to get into the main room. The reason for that is because if I take a musket and I fire it into that doorway, it's not going to go directly into the gunpowder, it's going to go into a dummy hallway next door. So it's a defense mechanism. But now, my question for you guys is, big mound here, no windows. Okay, you have 1,000 barrels of gunpowder in there. How are you going to see what to work with the gunpowder? A candle lantern. They took a candle lantern in and put it on a shelf just above the doorway that leads to that chimney there. And that same person would also take in a bucket of water in the other hand. Well, and he would stand by waiting for the candle in case something happened. And he would splash it, the candle, if it did fall over, while a second gentleman went in and worked with all the gunpowder. But there's enough gunpowder in this, in the powder magazine that if the candle does go over and he doesn't catch it in time, you could probably make this fort one big crater. Okay, so therefore I'm going to pass that job off to anybody else but me, not me. I don't want to be responsible for that. Behind me here is the officer's quarters. Just like a dollar bill, the officer's quarters is made up of 4 quarters, and each quarter is made up of 2 rooms. If you go into this doorway here, there is a room on either side that is connected by a back hallway. And the room behind the stairs here is set up for display. And you'll notice a couple of things in there. First thing you'll notice is there's a ceramic bowl. And again, everything you did in the bathroom this morning, this is what they did in the ceramic bowl. They'd brush their teeth, wash themselves, and go to the bathroom. Not necessarily in that order. They would go in order of which they need it. And then when they were done, they would take the bowl and they would empty it into the moat. And there were no laws back then against what water you could use for what. So they actually used the moat water to cook and clean with too. Okay. Then they figured they're going to be smart. They're not going to drink from the moat water because obviously it's dirty. They're going to go over the seawall and drink from the Delaware River water. Well, the problem with that is Philadelphia's right upstream. Their waste is going directly into the water, floating downstream to where you're drinking. So you're drinking waste anyway. The only difference is you're drinking strangers' waste as opposed to friendly waste. At least here you know what people are drinking, you know what they're eating. Up in Philadelphia, you don't know what's going on. So a lot of people did die of dysentery while they were here. The other thing you'll notice in this room is a bed with holes all up and down the side of it. And the reason for that is because they would take twine, they'd string it back and forth, and tie it nice and tight like shoelaces and throw hay on top of it, and that would be their mattress. This is where the saying, sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite comes from. As well as hit the hay. Did you ever hear the old saying, bite the bullet? You know where that comes from?
Wounded people.
What's that?
Wounded people. Yeah.
Wounded people. Can I borrow you for a second? Come on over here. Okay, turn and face everybody and hold your left arm up, straight. Okay. Keep your head facing that way and trust me with your life at all times, okay?
Okay.
Okay, let's say she gets shot in the arm right here and they can't get that bullet out, so what they're going to do is they're just going to cut it off. Okay? Probably call her righty because she's only got her right arm left too. Arm down and open your mouth. But because they didn't have any drugs to numb your body at the time, you'd feel every cut and tear. But instead of biting down on your tongue, they would put a bullet between your teeth and you'd bite down on the bullet. And they actually have found bullets that were completely flattened. That's how painful amputation is. Well, there's a good side and downside to this. It wouldn't break their teeth because the bullets back then were made of a very soft lead. Downside to it is...
They died from lead poisoning.
Exactly, it's lead. You're putting lead back in your body, so either way you probably will die of lead poisoning. Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, we'll head into the soldier's barrack.
Let's see if we'll ask him about that. He asked me what these are. I said, it's gotta be.
Okay, this is the soldiers' barracks. This is where they slept. Again, these are the beds I was referring to in the casemates. A little bit wider than we're used to because they slept 2 to 3 people per bed, 4 to 6 people per bunk. They slept sitting up because if the moat water comes in, floods in here, they don't want that getting into their lungs. They also thought that washing the natural waters off your body was bad for you, so they would only bathe voluntarily about once a month. Now, this whole wall here would be lined with beds just like this, as well as that back wall there. And in 4 hours, 4 men could take this whole room apart and move it. Because the only thing holding these beds together are these little tiny wooden pins. They were made for easy mobility. The only original bed to the room is that one right down there in the corner, and all the other ones are reproductions. Now this rack at the end holds everything a soldier carries on him to go to war. What's the most important thing that a soldier carries? His gun. So the butt of the gun would go right into one of these slots, and then the barrel of the musket would go into one of these pre-drilled holes right here. You also have pegs here that would hold everything else a soldier carries, including his bayonet, his powder box, or his charge box, which is a wooden box that's drilled with holes that holds all your gunpowder, covered by a leather top because if it rains, you want to protect that gunpowder. That's why as a soldier you pray for rainy days, because on rainy days you didn't fight. Because if your gun didn't go off, powder would get wet and you wouldn't be able to use it the next day even if it was sunny. So there was no fighting during rainy days. It also holds your haversack, which is this white sack right here. Holds all my personal belongings. Okay? It will hold your a bowl to eat from, fork, knife, and spoon, a tin cup to drink from, a canteen. If you couldn't carry it on you, you carry it on this side because again, you want to keep it away from the gunpowder. I have one of the more advanced canteens made by the Indian tribe at Walla, and it works pretty good. But it also holds a cracker called hardtack, which is like two saltines put together that you leave out on the counter for about a year, and you go back and try and eat it. It's not very tasty at all. I've tried it for the experience. It's not something I will try again. It's not very good at all. But again, it is very hard, and you couldn't just bite right into it because you need your teeth to be in the army. So they would actually dip the hardtack into their soup, and when it softened up, that's when they would eat it. Any questions? Okay. If you go right across the hall here, we're going to see what the fort looked like in 1777. Okay, right here is what they call a chevaux de frise. And in my mind, it's probably one of the most ingenious things they used during the Revolutionary War. It is a box that's filled with rocks that sinks to the bottom of the Delaware. Coming out of the sides of the box at a 45-degree angle are wooden poles the size of telephone poles. Judging by that size, you can see just how big they were in scale. Sitting on top of these wooden poles are these very iron tips that you see on the floor right here. And these tips would sit just below the water line. And when a British ship came by, it would scrape the bottom of the ship and sink the ship from underneath. Wouldn't be so bad if there's only about one of them out there, but there's about 500 of them out there during the Revolution. As late as last year, while dredging the river for commercial ships, they have found remnants of chevaux de frise, so they are still out there, believe it or not. Now, if you look at this diagram right over here, anywhere you see dashes in the river and lines of dashes, that is where all the chevaux de frise were placed. We knew they were where they were, but the British did not. Okay? Give you a brief recap on the beginning of the tour real quick. You have Fort Mifflin here, Fort Mercer here, and Fort Billingsport down there on the Jersey side. Fort Mifflin is built on an island that was completely filled with mud called Long Island. In 1771, Philadelphia was a very important city, so they decided to build a fort here to defend the city right here on the Delaware. The British built a fort, the eastern and southern walls as far up as the granite, and the rest of the walls were made of timber and earthwork at the time. They built from 1771 to 1774 because the revolution begins to rise. They decided they don't need this anymore. They abandoned the fort in about 1775. Colonials come in and take it over, and we also built Fort Mercer and Fort Billingsport around that time. George Washington had just been defeated at the Battle of Brandywine and again at the Battle of Germantown, after which Commander-in-Chief of the British Army, General Hale, takes his men into Philadelphia and takes over the city. Okay? His plan was to defeat the Continental Army in the winter of 1777, but because he just ran out of supplies on his last two battles, he needs more supplies in order to carry this plan out. Well, the supply lines are coming right up the Delaware, past our three forts, and into Philadelphia. With our three forts, we're going to hold 240 British naval ships right here on the river for 6 weeks. And that's represented here by the big tall ships. During that 6 weeks, General Washington marches his troops into Valley Forge, where he retrains the army. They come back and they win the Revolutionary War. That is why Fort Mifflin is known as the fort that saved America. During that 6 weeks, the siege starts in October of 1777. By November 10th, the British are tired of us getting in the way. They intensify their assault. We have 1,000 cannonballs coming over our walls every hour, destroying everything that's here. By November 14th, we're out of ammo, so the general tells his men for every soldier that catches a British cannonball before it sinks in the mud, give you a little bit more whiskey. We take the British cannonballs, put them on our cannons, we fire them right back at the British. Okay? And it works until we run out of gunpowder on November 15th, 1777. Without gunpowder, there's not much you can do. Orders were to burn the rest of the buildings that were once standing here. We leave our flag flying high to symbolize we did not surrender, and we abandon the fort in these little tiny Pennsylvania Navy ships and go over to Fort Mercer. Now, in the middle of the diorama here is a sandbar, which is an island of sand beneath the water. Stuck on the sandbar is the British ship, the Augusta. And it's stuck on the Augusta because it was just hit by one of the Chevaux freeze in the water. Now, there's a lot of speculation as to the next part of the story, but somehow a fire breaks out on the Augusta. And the fire spreads to the powder magazine. When it hits the powder magazine, it explodes so loud we can hear it in Reading, Pennsylvania. Now, historians have said that the British probably set fire to their own ship because they didn't want us getting control of it. But according to J.P. Martin, in his book, he tells that it was a hot shot that we fired that actually started the fire, which is a cannonball that's heated so that when you fire it, it burns anything in the wood. Now, right over here, we have some of the things that we fired at the British. This is a real cannonball found here at Fort Mifflin. It's about 12 pounds, but it is 12 pounds of solid lead. The shots that we fired are about 18, 24, and 32 pounds. Very heavy, very brutal. In the movie The Patriot with Mel Gibson, there's one scene where a cannonball is fired, bounces up, hits a guy in the leg, and the knee takes his leg clean off. Another shot is fired, hits a guy in the face, head follows the cannonball and the body just drops. So it was very, very brutal. Then we got a little creative with it. Cut a cannonball in half, put a bar in the middle, and called it a bar shot. When this is fired out of a cannon, it spins this way and destroys everything that it hits. It was also majorly responsible for ripping through sails and getting tangled up in the ropes of sails. It was very effective. Then we have a grape shot. When this is fired out of a cannon, the two discs come off, coil in the middle makes these 6-pounders spin, and they destroy everything that they hit. And again, we also had a hot shot. And hot shot is when you take the cannonball, put it into a special furnace called a hot shot furnace. And then you carefully load this, you wait till it's red hot, and then you carefully load this cannonball into a cannon that's already loaded with gunpowder. And when you do that, you're going to move as quickly as possible. Because once that ball hits the powder, it's going to explode. And when it does, this hot ball fires out, and anything that's made of wood will catch fire. Any questions so far?
How long was the cannon that they used for the hot shot?
I'm sorry, how long was it? It's probably about the size of the cannons we have on the ground.
Yes, real good.
Yeah.
How far would they fire up to?
My guess is probably about a mile. It would be accurate up to about a mile. Because during the time of the Revolutionary War, they weren't rifled. They didn't really come into rifling until the time of the Civil War. Okay. Just behind you are pictures from the inside of Casemate 11 when they first went in. That's what it looked like then. Looks a lot different now because we took all the cool things out, put some lights in there so you can see, put frames around the signatures. Right in the lower corner right there is a picture of William Hale's signature that is carved into the archway. Again, that's how we knew that it was in there. If you have no further questions, you want to...
The H's of metal out there.
The one, sorry?
The H's aren't embedded in the metal. Are they clean your shoes that you walk in?
They are known as a boot scraper.
I told you.
Invented by none other than who?
Let's say Franklin. Say,
You want to put your money down with Franklin?
why not?
Bingo. And Franklin did invent that. That's exactly what they're for. Again, according to J.P. Morton's book, all this grass out here, not grass, all mud. So you probably use that to scrape the mud off your boots before you came in here. Any other questions?
Well, how does it die?
Who died?
The grass.
The what?
The grass? Oh, if people are walking on it from it getting too high.
Yeah, the people who died here, like, were their bodies shipped back home, or was there?
Very good question. During the time of the Revolution, we had about between 300 to 400 soldiers here. Okay, about half of them died. Some of them, we have had reports that they were buried behind where the office is today. And when they built the Army Corps of Engineers, they dug them up and buried them elsewhere. But a lot of times they were actually taken with them when we abandoned the fort and then buried over in Jersey along the way.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions?
How do they get those things in the water?
They would take them out empty.
Empty and load them up?
Right, they would come out with another ship with about 2 tons of rock and just keep filling it until it sinks. Anything else? Okay. I would like to see a real musket, a real gun.
Want to see a real musket?
Well, if you guys will have to see it on the porch, I'll get my musket and I'll show you how it works and fire it for you guys.
Thank you.
You can leave that open.
It's a swinging shot.
Yeah, I know. I can't get it to stay open. The wind usually just takes it. These things are really designed for it, but that one doesn't seem to be working. Hard to get that one to stay in place while you put that there. There you go. Thank you. That worked. Okay, just have a seat right here on the porch and I'll go grab the musket.
Wait, want to fire the musket?